Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, this is Andrew, and welcome back to Overwatch. Something that I've noticed a lot in the forum, subreddit, what have you. A lot of people are complaining about Zenyatta because they can't really quite figure out how to play him. And I don't really blame them because, I mean, he's the one who I started off in Overwatch, and I felt the same way. When I first started off with Zenyatta, I was like, man, this guy is really hard to use. I thought he sucked. But over time, I kind of started to appreciate him some more, so I figured, maybe I could share some of my knowledge. This isn't going to be like a super in-depth guide on Zenyatta. It's going to be more like a random collection of tips that I think would help you guys improve in Zenyatta. I'm assuming that you guys already know what all of his abilities do. I'm just sort of assuming that you know how to read the F1 key on Overwatch. So without further ado, let's just get right into it. The first tip is probably the most obvious one, and that is that positioning is key on Zenyatta. He is really squishy, so you really have to make sure you position yourself well. Make sure you're always around teammates, especially when there's a Widowmaker around. You really don't want to be sniped, because she can actually one-shot body shot you. So if you find yourself dying to a sniper a lot, yeah, that's probably why. She's not even landing headshots on you, she just has to tag a body shot and you're going down. Zenyatta is often viewed as food for the offensive flanker type heroes who kind of get back in the back lines and pick off people. You just really got to make sure your positioning is on point, make sure your team knows to protect you. And to be fair, Zenyatta can hold his own if you are able to aim well, go for headshots, and this is sort of bleeding into tip 2. So tip 2, make sure your accuracy is on point. Personally, I like to go for at least 35 to 40% plus accuracy in each Zenyatta game. That's just my numbers that I kind of threw out there. I just noticed that whenever I get around this range or higher, my Zenyatta game tends to be a lot better. Maybe it's different for you guys, but for me, that's where my range is at. Now, going for headshots when you have the Discord Orb on someone is critical as Zenyatta. It does so much damage. Currently, each of the balls do about 45 damage. Double that, plus the 50% extra damage on the Discord Orb. I mean, that is 135 damage per shot. That is a shit ton of damage, guys. And this is what I was sort of talking about with countering the flanking heroes. If you're able to land your headshots, you have decent aim, you do have a chance against some of the flanking heroes that are trying to kill you. Obviously, if a Roadhog hooks you and then shotguns you, you're pretty much dead, but typically you want to keep your enemies at somewhat of a distance. If they get super close to you, you may have to whip out a clutch Discord Orb into double headshot kind of thing. This is all coming down to just sort of pure technical, mechanical aiming skills, which you can, of course, fine-tune in the training room. So be sure to hit up the training room, start working on your strafe aiming, and make sure you get your aim on point. One thing to note, and you guys may be wondering why I haven't mentioned it, but I'm not a huge fan of the right-click charge-up thing, where it shoots out a volley of 5 or 6 orbs. That's just not really my thing. I find myself missing a lot of my shots whenever I do that. For me personally, I just stick with the plain old, good old left-click on Zenyatta, but if the charge-up thing is your cup of tea, by all means go for it. It's just for me, I've experimented with both extensively, and it just never really worked out for me. So the only time I can think of whenever that volley attack ever worked for me, the right click, was whenever there's someone stationary and hasn't really noticed me. I can just kind of go for cheap, easy headshots with all 5 balls. That's pretty much it. So the reason why I brought this up is just because if you guys find yourself struggling to use the right click on moving targets and stuff like that, don't worry, you're not the only one. I definitely struggle with that. Try out using the left click more often. Of course, this is just from my personal experience. If you guys are like prodigies at using the right click charge up mode, by all means, knock yourself out. Use that. Now, next up we have tip 3, which is sort of a short little tip here, but it's good to know. Zenyatta actually does not have any footstep audio associated with his movement, and that is because, obviously, he's floating, which makes sense. It makes sense, but, maybe a lot of people didn't know that. I just figured I would mention that if you ever want to play a super aggressive stealth mode Zenyatta that likes to flank around and kill people. Probably would not recommend using that, especially if you're struggling in playing Zenyatta anyways already. It's a useful tidbit, kind of good to know information. Next up for tip 4, I want to talk a little bit about the Discord Orb, and what is interesting about that ability is you can animation cancel that ability, which means you don't actually have to lose out on any rate of fire. You can be shooting at someone, toss up a Discord Orb, and just continue firing without going through the long animation of throwing out the Discord Orb, if you know what I mean. So, useful tip right there. Definitely useful when you're trying to take someone out really quickly, or if you're in a situation where your CQC, someone has rushed you, and you're just trying to get damage out on them. him. Now, for tip number 5, we have a few things regarding his health pool. As you guys all know, he has 150 health, 100 of that is made up of shield, so it will regenerate. What I like to do, just to be sort of a team player when I'm playing Zenyatta, is to be a little bit more conservative with the health packs. You know, I won't just rush and top off my HP, because I know most of my HP will regenerate. So typically, you know, unless it's a really dire situation and I have to heal really fast, I'll usually just leave the health packs for my teammates to use, since most of my health can be regenerated pretty quickly. Now, moving on to tip number 6, I think it was. Number 6 is his Transcendence ability, which is, of course, a giant AoE heal. His ultimate ability charges up pretty quickly, and most people save for those big pushes, which is great. I think it's a great idea to use it during those big pushes, but I would also like to add that it can counter a lot of ultimates. I like to use it as a counter ulti, if you will. If a Zarya lands a ridiculously nice ultimate on my teammates, you know, I quickly cast my Transcendence to make myself invulnerable and counter any sort of damage, mitigate any sort of damage coming in. Now, like I said before, Zenyatta does charge up his ultimate pretty quickly, but I would not waste it to save yourself. It does make you invulnerable, but you can't attack. So if you're alone, you get caught out, please don't pop the Transcendence to try to get away, because it's just delaying your death, really. The only times I would ever use it to save myself would be if my teammates are close to me anyways, and it's a good way to turn a fight, but that's really about it. Anyways, guys, that's just about it for today's video on Zenyatta. Some pointers for you guys on how to play Zenyatta a little bit better. Hopefully it's helped. And if you guys want more tips for Zenyatta, or if you have more tips on how to play Zenyatta, let me know down in the comments, and maybe I'll make a part 2. But this is just sort of a quick and dirty top 6 tips, I think, for Zenyatta. Yeah, 6 tips, guys. Let me know if this helped, and until next time, I'll see you in the next one.